I speak to you today with feelings of profound sorrow. Throughout her life, Her Majesty the Queen, my beloved mother, was an inspiration, an example to me and to all my family. And we owe her the most heartfelt debt any family could owe to their mother, for her love, affection, guidance, understanding, and example. Queen Elizabeth was a life well lived, a promise with destiny kept, and she is mourned most deeply in her passing. That promise of lifelong service I renew to you all today. Alongside the personal grief that all my family are feeling, we also share with so many of you in the United Kingdom, in all the countries where the Queen was head of state, in the Commonwealth and across the world, a deep sense of gratitude for the more than 70 years in which my mother, as Queen, served the people of so many nations. In 1947, on her 21st birthday, she pledged in a broadcast from Cape Town to the Commonwealth to devote her life, whether it be short or long, to the service of her peoples. That was more than a promise. It was a profound personal commitment which defined her whole life. She made sacrifices for duty. Her dedication and devotion as sovereign never wavered through times of change and progress, through times of joy and celebration, and through times of sadness and loss. In her life of service, we saw that abiding love of tradition, together with that fearless embrace of progress, which makes us great as nations. The affection, admiration, and respect she inspired became the hallmark of her reign. And as every member of my family can testify, she combined these qualities with warmth, humor, and an unerring ability always to see the best in people. I pay tribute to my mother's memory, and I honor her life of service. I know that her death brings great sadness to so many of you, and I share that sense of loss beyond measure with you all. When the Queen came to the throne, Britain and the world were still coping with the privations and aftermath of the Second World War, and still living by the conventions of earlier times. In the course of the last 70 years, we have seen our society become one of many cultures and many faiths. The institutions of the state have changed in turn. But through all changes and challenges, our nation and the wider family of realms, of whose talents, traditions, and achievements I am so inexpressibly proud, have prospered and flourished. Our values have remained and must remain constant. The role and the duties of monarchy also remain, as does the sovereign's particular relationship and responsibility towards the Church of England, the church in which my own faith is so deeply rooted. In that faith and the values it inspires, I have been brought up to cherish a sense of duty to others and to hold in the greatest respect the precious traditions, freedoms, and responsibilities of our unique history and our system of parliamentary government. As the Queen herself did with such unswerving devotion, I too now solemnly pledge myself throughout the remaining time God grants me, to uphold the constitutional principles at the heart of our nation. And wherever you may live in the United Kingdom, or in the realms and territories across the world, and whatever may be your background or beliefs, I shall endeavor to serve you with loyalty, respect, and love, as I have throughout my life. My life will, of course, change as I take up my new responsibilities. It will no longer be possible for me to give so much of my time and energies to the charities and issues for which I care so deeply. But I know this important work will go on in the trusted hands of others. This is also a time of change for my family. I count on the loving help of my darling wife, Camilla. In recognition of her own loyal public service since our marriage 17 years ago, she becomes my Queen Consort. I know she will bring to the demands of her new role the steadfast devotion to duty on which I have come to rely so much. As my heir, William now assumes the Scottish titles which have meant so much to me. He succeeds me as Duke of Cornwall and takes on the responsibilities for the Duchy of Cornwall, which I have undertaken for more than 5 decades. Today, I am proud to create him Prince of Wales, Tywysog Cymru, the country whose title I've been so greatly privileged to bear during so much of my life and duty. With Catherine beside him, our new Prince and Princess of Wales will, I know, continue to inspire and lead our national conversations, helping to bring the marginal to the centre ground, where vital help can be given. I want also to express my love for Harry and Meghan as they continue to build their lives overseas. In a little over a week's time, we will come together as a nation, as a Commonwealth, and indeed a global community, to lay my beloved mother to rest. In our sorrow, let us remember and draw strength from the light of her example. On behalf of all my family, I can only offer the most sincere and heartfelt thanks for your condolences and support. They mean more to me than I can ever possibly express. And to my darling Mama, as you begin your last great journey to join my dear late Papa, I want simply to say this: thank you. Thank you for your love and devotion to our family and to the family of nations you have served so diligently all these years. May flights of angels sing thee to thy rest.
To my darling Mama, and as you begin your journey, your long journey to join my beloved Papa, thank you so much for all you've done. May a flight of angels sing you. You know, really, this is such a poignant way for, you know, now King Charles III to end off his message to the nation, starting off by talking about how they owe the most heartfelt debt any family can ever owe to their mother, and saying that she's mourned very deeply in her passing. And Osofi still joins us here in studio. Osofi, you know, before we even talk about, you know, Cape Town, we just talk about the King Charles III as a son, And once again, that closeness that he shared with his mother coming back to, to light.
Yes, indeed, the parents. We know that he was very close to his father. We remember when his father passed on, Prince Philip. I think he did show the emotions, and that was clear then that the relationship was very strong. And of course, as he pointed out, the mother and the matriarch, the woman who led that country as the head of state of United Kingdom for 70 years. And it is that endurance that was displayed by his mother that has propelled him to be where he is. Even during difficult times, the fallout with the former wife, Princess Diana, who was loved by the nation, and he had to pick himself up. And I have no doubt that the parents were there to assist him to rise again. And today, he is the king.
And at the same time, you think about that moment as you talk about Princess Diana, that even his own mother came under fire during that time, because some were saying that she's not showing any signs of mourning until even that moment when we saw her coming out of Buckingham Palace.
Yes, today he displayed maturity. And I think with the passing of time, he has realized that he has to be human. And that is why he's involved in many charities, including wildlife and also environment, education. As he pointed out, that some of those responsibilities will be given to others because he has got now a bigger responsibility. And also, I want to return to Cape Town. I will definitely return to Cape Town because this is where you understand news that you may think this is a story far from us, but we, as a nation, as a country, as a continent, we paved the way for the changes that happened in that house, in a sense that in 1947, we did run a story yesterday and today talking about Queen Elizabeth's visit to South Africa in 1947, celebrating her 21st birthday, making that prophetic statement, almost committing to serving the Commonwealth and the United Kingdom. And even today, everybody is now referring to that speech. And Kenya, where the news came that his father has passed on, and she becomes a queen on the continent where she made a pledge. And today, his son making that pledge. And him also talking about how the Second World War has kind of changed the dynamics. Today, we have the United Nations with the aim of uniting the people of the world, because we believe, the world believes that we have to be one. And therefore, almost not really talking about the changes that we can expect under his leadership, I think, to try and modernize the monarchy. And him talking about handing over certain responsibilities, even changing the title of Prince William and Catherine, who now are becoming the Duke and the Duchess of Wales, and which speaks to now they are indeed going to be the next in throne, should anything happen.
And he even, borrows also even from his own mother's speech there in Cape Town about the pledge, to serve her people, and saying that she was, really going to do everything she possibly can. And this is what he says he's now going to do to ensure that the service that his mother pledged to the people is going to be quite important. But also, also if one thinks about, when you think about Cape Town, it's then no surprise that we are even seeing all these mixed reactions, even from the former colonies. Even here at home, you think about opposition parties, the PAC, the ATM, the EFF, among others, who have, had not so great words, to react, and watching also what is happening on social media and what people are saying on the streets.
With my little experience as a journalist, he got a briefing in terms of the reaction worldwide. He is fully aware where he is, that the former colonies are very aggrieved. And that is why he's trying to reach out. And him starting with South Africa not even starting with Great Britain, starting with South Africa. He's trying to reach out to the Commonwealth countries. And I think this is a moment for him to do what those who were colonized want the monarchy to do, and the former colonizers and oppressors to do: apologize, take responsibility, where possible, pay the reparation, and where possible, repatriate what you took on the continent. And it will be peace.
And also talking about, also for one thing that you mentioned earlier on, which is also important, is how he's learned over time. And one thinks about the relationship that he's had over time as well with his now Queen Consort, Camilla Parker Bowles. You think about how this, in various interviews, even with the late Princess Diana, continued to be a thorn in their marriage, because they met even before and during. She was still a factor in post. So thanking her tonight and saying that she's been quite a pillar, someone who has had the service to the people and on whose strength he's come to rely, is also a moment not to be taken lightly.
Yes, it is a moment where he is saying, we are now starting another journey. Please continue to support me. But also what was touching, him mentioning Harry and Meghan, saying they are trying to live their own lives overseas, almost endorsing what they are doing. Maybe behind the scenes, this is not something that they wanted, but they have accepted that this is now what they have chosen. And you know, it's very strange because the Queen passed on at a time where Mary and Meghan were in Europe for their charity work. Meghan looking after the One Goal a project to help the poor and the disadvantaged and those who are suffering around the world, be it education, health, maternal health. And then Harry Invictus also helping those soldiers who got injured during the wars. And therefore, you know, the passing on of the Queen, it's very historic. On a day after she confirmed Liz Truss as the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. And fortunately, the couple, Harry and Meghan, were in Europe, and therefore it was easy for them. We know that Harry was in Balmoral, even though he did his own arrangements to go to Balmoral, and he left in the morning, own arrangements to Buckingham Palace. And as we speak, majority of them are now in London.
All right, Osophi, thank you so much for that. Let's take you then to the ground where Giles Gibson is joining us from London to give us an update. Giles, thank you so much for your time this evening. The King has now addressed the nation, and he is also thanking the nation for the outpouring of love and support. How has it been received?
Well, we are just a few hundred metres away from Buckingham Palace, which is just at the other end of the Mall where I'm standing. And I can tell you there is still a large crowd of people out here right in central London. And many people will, of course, have been listening into that speech, that inaugural speech from now King Charles III. This is a role that they've never seen him in before. For so long, he's been the Prince of Wales. He's been the heir, the man waiting to take charge. And now we saw him, his first real set-piece event as King Charles, as the monarch. I mean, just to pick out a couple of things from his speech, we saw him give a really dedicated, really heartfelt tribute to his mother. It was sort of weaved throughout that speech. He talked about how he wanted to renew today her promise that she gave all those years ago of lifelong service. And I think as well, he talked a lot about the Commonwealth. He talked a lot in that speech about how the Commonwealth had really dominated the time and the service that Queen Elizabeth II and all those years of service that she spent on the throne. So those were a couple of things that really just jumped out at me from that speech, which we were listening to here, just steps away from Buckingham Palace and its gates.
And Giles, we talk about, firsts and the announcements that were made. Another first is now that, Prince William is now the Prince of Wales, and you know, his wife Kate is now the Princess of Wales, and they're now moving on to the roles of the Duke and the Duchess of Cornwall. That, of course, also was to be expected.
That's right. Of course, so much of this speech was spent dedicating, you know, kind words, talking about his mother's service and her sacrifice and her sense of duty. He also talked about how he shared a sense of loss with the British people, so really trying to show that connection with his people as he steps into this brand new role that he has been waiting many decades to take over. But there was also some news in this speech. He made it very clear that Prince William is now going to be taking over that title that Charles held for so many years, taking on that title of Prince of Wales, and also taking on another of his titles, the Duke of Cornwall. So even as Prince Charles, even as the country here and all of these people you can see around me walking down the Mall look back and remember Queen Elizabeth II, we are also seeing the wheels of motion in terms of the British royal family, that they move on, and that is what we are seeing right in front of our eyes. We're seeing King Charles III giving his first speech just minutes ago, and then Prince William moving up that line of succession, becoming the Prince of Wales, and you know, who knows how long he'll be in that role before we are back here again.
And that process of moving on as well, you know, quite important, as he also sends his love to, you know, Prince Harry and his wife Meghan, almost signaling that they've accepted now that, you know, they are building a life overseas for themselves.
Yeah, it was a very short line in that speech, but it was a really important one. He said, as you say, that he sent his love to Harry and Meghan as they continue their lives overseas. And that was perhaps an attempt from King Charles to move on from some of the friction that we've seen, some of those damaging newspaper headlines about a split, really, about Harry and Meghan moving over to the United States, moving away from their royal duties, giving up so many of those things, so many of those duties, so many of those parts of their lives that they were supposed to have to start that new life in America. And of course, in the media all over the world, there's been so much talk about potential splits and friction within the royal family. So that was clearly an attempt from King Charles to draw a line in the sand and try to move on from that, as he, of course, takes on this new, very, very important role.
All right, Giles, thank you so much for bringing us some perspective from what's happening on the ground. That's Giles Gibson, our correspondent in London. Of course, this follows that address by